Hey everybody, Christopher Odd here, and in this video we're going to be going over all of the facilities that are available to be built inside the Avenger of XCOM 2. For each facility, I'm going to talk about what it's used for. I'm going to talk about what happens if you staff an engineer there, and I'm also going to talk about some strategic considerations for placement. Those are of course going to be my own opinions. The placement is going to vary wildly for everybody, but I'll talk about a couple of things that have worked for me over my time with XCOM 2. As with the skill tree videos that I did in the past, if you want to click on any specific facility that's more appealing to you, feel free to do that and you'll be taken directly to that point in the video. I will be working from left to right, top to bottom. So if you have any questions that I don't answer, feel free to just leave me a comment and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So let's get started with the Scilab. The Scilab is unique because this is where you train your 5th class of soldiers, the Psi operatives. And it's really quite straightforward. If you go ahead and select a soldier, has to be a rookie. Let's go ahead and choose Marbazir here. You're going to place them into a training period to become a Psi operative. During that initial training period, they're not available to go out on the battlefield. However, in subsequent training periods where you are presented with a choice of 3 randomly selected psionic skills, you can interrupt training and take them out to the battlefield and they will return where they left off when they get home, if they get home. And if you staff an engineer here, it increases the training speed by 100%, so you almost always want to have this happening if you have the engineer available to you. You can also upgrade this, and I've got the supplies to do so, so it takes some supplies, some Elerium crystals, and some additional power. But if you were to upgrade it, you could go ahead and place another rookie in here to become a Psi operative and train 2 at a time if you so desire. I'm not going to do that now, but that's how the Scilab works. So next up we have the Guerrilla Tactics School, and Guerrilla Tactics School is actually amazing. It's one of the earliest facilities that you're going to want to build because what it lets you do is it lets you put any rookie in here and train them as a specific class. They're not going to be available to you while they're training, but when they come out, they're going to be a squaddie of the class that you so desire. So let's say that we really wanted to build Grenadier, and early on, Grenadiers are fantastic. So you would just begin training and they will come out in the allotted amount of time. See, you can see him, he's working hard back there. And they will be available to you as that class that you chose. Early on, you should always have rookies in here training. Try not to forget that. I've done it myself where I'll just forget about it and I have a bunch of rookies that are really useless. But this is a way to make your rookies a little bit more substantial out in the battlefield. It also provides some new combat tactics. And within here, I'll show you what each of these do so that you can make some choices for what you want to upgrade first. Let's start at the top. So first up, we have 3 class-specific choices that you can make. And these are unlocked later on when your soldiers reach a specific rank. So your sharpshooter, it's just going to give a bonus to all of your sharpshooters of 10% to critically hit enemies. For specialists, they get cool under pressure, where all of your specialists get plus 10 aim and the ability to critical hit when taking overwatch and reaction shots. It's pretty powerful. The Grenadier gets biggest booms. This is massive, no pun intended, but explosives can inflict critical damage. And it happens pretty regularly, you'd be surprised. But when it hits pretty hard. I'll go down to the last class-specific one. It's the Ranger. This is probably the most powerful one of the group, but attacks against flanked enemies deal plus 3 damage. And if you combine that with flanked enemies already having a higher chance to crit, and the Ranger's using shotguns a lot of the times, it's very, very good. You also have one called Lightning Strike. This is available to you pretty early on. Your units will gain plus 3 mobility for the first 2 turns of battle while the squad remains concealed. This is actually really, really good. And the reason it's good is because in missions where you have a countdown timer, early on in that mission, you want to go as far as you possibly can to reach your objective. And this will help you with that. Wet Work gives plus 25% experience gain from kills. You're going to want to grab that as early as possible. Squad Size 1 is available once you reach an early rank with one of your soldiers, and you can increase your squad size by 1. Squad Size 2, at a further rank down the tree, you can increase another for a maximum of 6 squad mates. Integrated Warfare means that all of your PCS bonuses are significantly improved. Vengeance is cool because if a squad mate dies or is critically wounded, you gain random tactical bonuses for 2 turns. So you can get increases to aim, crit chance, mobility, things like that. So it can be powerful in the event that somebody goes down. Vulture is nice to pick up early on because enemies will drop an additional item with every timed loot drop. And you just want to put as many weapon upgrades on all of your soldiers as possible. So if you can get some great ones early, then this is fantastic. And last but not least, Stay With Me. This makes it so that your soldiers will be more likely to bleed out than to die outright. Obvious implications are positive. So that's the Guerrilla Tactics School. Next up, we have a simple power relay. You can build these on any of the tiles, and it works as you would imagine. It provides power to the Avenger. There's 2 ways to further increase power. You can man an engineer here permanently, and that'll give plus 5 power. And this one I've gone ahead and upgraded so it has 2 slots for engineers. And if I wanted to, I could place another engineer here to grab an additional 5 power. And early on, you're gonna wanna do that because, well, it depends. You're gonna wanna do that if you happen to have extra engineers lying around, which isn't always possible. But sometimes it's not feasible to build a whole power relay somewhere else based on placement or based on time. So it's something to think about early on. Next up, we have the Proving Ground facility. And if you staff an engineer here, or a gremlin in this case, then you're able to increase the project speed by 100%. And the way the Proving Ground works is you're able to use these things called cores, Elerium cores, that you pick up out in the battlefield as loot drops. And you can then turn those into experimental ammo, grenades, armor, heavy weapons, or some other things depending on where you're at in the research tree. The interesting thing about the Proving Grounds, and my one piece of advice is, you can stack your projects. What I mean by that is, let's say, you see how I have experimental ammo here going for 5 days? If I wanted to go experimental armor,
right away, Commander.
It's going to add that.
Project is complete.
It's going to add that after the ammo is done, and then I could go ahead and I could do heavy weapons and all that. So you can stack these if you just don't want to think about it. You can go in here and you can actually like move them around priority-wise if you really want to. You can cancel them. My advice is to just do the one and then wait till it's done, come back and do another, so that you're always checking in, and your priorities might be changing. And yeah, you can come in here and do this, but I find that whenever I stacked these, I tend to forget about it. And then I may have wanted something else to have happened in that time frame. So that's just a little piece of advice from my little bit of time with XCOM 2. So next up we have the workshop. And what the workshop does is it allows you to staff an engineer here to get 2 gremlins. So the way gremlins work is that they essentially act like engineers for any adjacent buildings, up, down, to the sides. So you trade 1 engineer for essentially 2. And you can upgrade this as well to get an additional workbench where you can get an additional engineering slot, which will give you 2 extra gremlins. So that means you could have 4 gremlins, 1 for every side of the workshop. So placement considerations are pretty obvious, but I'll just say it anyways. You should place this in kind of one of these middle sections here, preferably one of these 2, because that's where you're going to get the most range, or the most kind of gremlin uses if it's surrounded by other facilities and if you upgrade it. So that's the workshop, pretty straightforward, but early on it is worth investing in because it gives you the extra engineer that you might need. Next up, we've got the Advanced Warfare Center. This is absolutely essential, specifically in a Legend run where if somebody gets injured, they're going to be out for such a long period of time. How this works is you can staff an engineer here or a gremlin to increase the healing rate by 100%. So essentially cutting it in half, which is substantial. You can also retrain soldier abilities. So let's say, as an example, we wanted to retrain, let's say, Leonardo here, okay? We're gonna put them in here. It's gonna take a little bit of time, and I'll show you. Ability retraining is gonna take 10 days in this scenario. But what that lets you do is you can have specific builds for the early game, and then you can retrain. It's only 10 days, that's not too bad, and have a completely different build later on, depending on the type of enemies that you might be running into more or less often than you were previously. So it's pretty powerful. The other benefit to the Advanced Warfare Center is that it can grant a random perk to a soldier anytime that they promote, or anytime they get promoted, that comes from a different skill tree. So as an example, you could get Implacable applied to a sniper, right? There's a lot of different combinations that can happen, and it doesn't happen all the time. It's not super common, but it's worth getting this early on, because the more times your soldier goes through promotions, the more chances they have at getting these random abilities from other trees. So that's the Advanced Warfare Center. Next up, we have the Shadow Chamber. Now, this is one...
Now that we've built the Shadow Chamber, we should be able to complete a more thorough analysis of the alien artifacts and data we've been recovering.
Yeah, you got that right. So she kind of just explained it for me, which is great, but the Shadow Chamber allows for some additional research projects to be done. Some of them are spoilery, so I won't talk about that, but it's absolutely essential if you're going to be progressing the story. But the Shadow Chamber has one other benefit that I think is even more important, and I'm going to just quickly jump out to the geoscape here to show you what that is like. If you are going to head to any specific mission, the Shadow Chamber is going to go ahead and show you how many enemies are detected at that site, and it will show you what the enemy types are. So if we're going to go take on this alien facility right now, we know that there's an Andromedon, a Codex, a Shield Bearer, an Elite Lancer, an Elite Trooper, a Heavy Mech, an Elite Officer, and multiples of some of these. But we also have an unknown enemy. So if it's an enemy that we haven't seen before, it will not tell us what that is, which is pretty cool, but you know you're in for a surprise, so it's interesting. But what this does is it really lets you plan out your build, or your loadouts before you go on the mission. So if you have more organic enemies, you want to take things like dragon rounds or venom rounds. If you have more robotic enemies, you're going to want to take out your hacking specialists, so you want to take out some of your blue screen rounds, which does more damage to robotic enemies. It's essential intel into an upcoming mission that can't be overlooked. So next up we have the Defense Matrix. And Defense Matrix is pretty cool. You might be able to guess just by this short little clip here, but what it does is it repurposes any of the turrets that you destroy out in the battlefield as defensive turrets for when a UFO comes and attacks the Avenger and you have to defend the Avenger. So I've done an Avenger defense video in the past, and on that attempt, we didn't have this facility in place, but if we did, there would be turrets out there that would be defending the Avenger against enemies, which is pretty amazing. And if you staff an engineer here, it will actually increase the stats of the turret. It'll make them a little bit stronger, increase their aim and things like that. So you can also upgrade this to quad turrets, it's called, where you can install additional turrets on the Avenger, which will help defend against any ground assault. So it's just more turrets. And this is something that personally I would recommend building as late as possible. It's a non-essential facility in my opinion. Next up we have resistance comms. These are very important to build early on as you want to get in touch with more of the resistance across the world. And this is kind of like the satellite uplinks from EU or EW. And if you staff an engineer, then you can increase the amount of people that you can contact. You can also upgrade, as I've shown here. to allow for an additional engineer to go here and get additional contacts. So keep in mind when you do build the resistance comms, it doesn't add a whole lot to your contacts. It's when you start putting the engineers in here where that starts to really rapidly accelerate. This is very important because if you don't build these, or if you don't build them early enough, you're not going to be able to attack some of the alien facilities that come up across the world, and that's going to drive progress towards the Avatar project, which is like the alien win condition. So resistance comms is absolutely essential. Okay, next up we have another power relay, although this is a non-upgraded version, so this is what it looks like if you don't unlock this additional slot. The interesting thing about this one is that it was placed on a power coil, an exposed coil, which was in the bottom left and bottom right for my start. Sometimes they show up in the middle, like they can show up really anywhere, but most common I've seen is all along the bottom here, so it takes the longest to get to. And it's kind of like the thermo generators of EU and EW, where if you place a power relay on the exposed power coil, you get more power from it. So that should be your kind of late game defined placements. You're never really going to place anything else other than power relays on those slots. And last but not least here, we have another resistance comm, and it's located in the, like, wherever I could put it pretty much, to provide additional contacts again. So that is all of the facilities that are available to be built in XCOM 2. I've talked a little bit about the placements already, so I won't go too much more over that. But early on, it's really important to get the Guerrilla Tactics School, in my opinion. I think a lot of people are going to want to rush for the Advanced Warfare Center, which is fine. It kind of depends, like, are your soldiers typically getting hit a lot in battle? I find early on that if the soldiers get hit, more often than not, they're probably dead, depending on the enemy. So that might be a non-essential kind of upgrade. Guerrilla Tactics School, however, being able to train your rookies to be something a little bit more substantial is pretty important. And then power relays you're going to need early on because your early power benefits are not that high, and you're going to need to develop that. Resistance comms are super important early on. But you'd be surprised. You can actually get by for a little while without expanding too rapidly, and things usually work out okay. Now, one thing I'll talk about here before we go is you'll notice that I've got the Scilab right at the top. Obviously, in the early game, I wasn't able to build the Scilab because you have to research to get there. And I didn't have this slot available because I'm pretty sure I had power there, actually. And what you can do is if you go into your build facilities screen, you're able to get a good overview of what's available, either upgrades, where your engineers are, what type of people you have staffed in here. Or you can go ahead and you can remove any of the facilities that you've previously built. And I've done that. So in order to get the Scilab there, I removed a power relay because I replaced it with stronger power relays on power coils at the bottom. And that's something to consider, that, you know, early game, you're going to have to just take what's available to you and just cram in all of these different facilities. But later, if you need to make space, then go ahead and do it. There's obviously a bit of a delay in terms of building the new facility, but removal is instant. So that is pretty much it, ladies and gentlemen.
I saw Tyler to himself in one of the corridors. I'm not sure he even noticed me. Bradford trusts him, but I'm still keeping my eyes open.
Oh yeah, Shen, a little hesitant there, I understand. But that pretty much covers it, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. But that's your basic overview of the facilities that are available.
I don't know where people are getting those damn Advent burgers. But if I find another wrapper stuffed under one of these command consoles, there's gonna be hell to pay.
Yeah, Bradford's a clean freak. There's a lot of interesting banter that happens here, and I'll just try to wrap up before anybody else interrupts me and say thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll try my best to answer them. Hopefully this helps, and look forward to seeing what you guys do when you start playing the game for yourselves. Take care, guys. Bye.
The world you once knew is no more.